Welcome to another episode of the Chronicles of Mister. I am Mr. Pierre, and I'm so glad to be joined by Mr. Short. Mr. Short, thank you very much for being on the podcast.
Man, thanks for the invitation, man. I love talking about teaching, so it just gives me another opportunity to do that.
Same. And anytime I'm able to have a conversation and chop it up with another black man who's an educator, we were 2%. We're now down to 1.3%. So anytime I'm
Oh,
able
wow, I
to,
didn't even realize that it dropped like that.
there's not a lot of us who are doing it, and so for folks like yourself and myself who are in this, it's always nice to hear why and to be able to drop a couple gems to whoever's thinking of coming into the profession, so they can not only just come in but be present for a good chunk of time, so that our kiddos can get what they need, which is representation, which is so super important.
Mm-hmm.
If I could start with there, like, what brought you into education?
Well, oddly enough, I started off as a writer, so I did podcasts or did radio and did writing, did all of that, and then oddly enough, I got into education essentially to become stable because obviously as a writer, sometimes you're a struggling writer, you're not making much money, you're just still trying to find your way. So I started in education, and then I worked at a behavior school, and then I worked at an aftercare program after that behavior school in the evening time. And at that point, I started to enjoy working with kids. It wasn't about the pedagogical stuff. I didn't know anything about that before I got into teaching.
Right.
And I was like, the bug caught me. And I actually got offered a writing job, and I turned it down. I was like, hey, I want to be a teacher. And it really was just really wanting to work with kids. And I actually, after I turned down that writing job, I actually didn't get an actual job to teach until like over a year later. Because I had to go through a teacher preparation program, all that good stuff. So at that point, I decided I wanted to become a teacher.
And how many years has it been since you've been in the classroom?
Well, I was interventionist for 2 years. So you will say going into my 8th year actually would be my 7th full year. I actually only taught about a part of my 5th year. Mm-hmm. So next year would be my 7th full year, but this would be my 8th year as a teacher. Then my 10th year overall, which is crazy. It's been that long. I can't believe it's been 10 year overall in education period. It's like, whoa, that's kind of, you start crossing into vet territory.
Yeah.
So
you're there, sir. Props to you. To anyone who's listening, to know that for a lot of teachers, or when teachers choose to exit, is usually around year 3 or year 4. When you're able to make it a year 5, and I'm sure you've seen this in the years that you've been teaching too, that there are teachers who come in, they got a lot of zeal and energy and whatnot, and then that first year for everyone is usually rough, because you're just like, there's theory and then there's practice, and the practice of it all is like, oh, this is different from me student teaching, where I just could just sort of double dutch in and not have to be there and sustain everything by myself. Yeah. And then usually year 3 or year 4, you're realizing, oh, either I've set up systems that are going to lead to success, or I've tasted success, whatever that may look like for you. But if you're really about it, year 5 is when it's like, all right, now I know the content, I know these certain strategies, I know what it is and what's important to me. And so that's when you're like really building that muscle memory of like,
and I would agree with that. I know a teammate of mine, my first year, he told me, sometimes you don't know what's going to happen until it happens. Like in teaching, there's so many new things that happen. So you can't, I mean, we had a pandemic. Now these kids learn differently. Even when I first got in, you got different. TikTok wasn't even out there when I first started teaching. And I don't even look at it like, oh, I'm that old of a teacher. Like it wasn't that long ago. You know, Snapchat was the thing then. Or of course you had Instagram, Facebook. The kids didn't even use that. So now it's different stuff you have to combat and deal with. And going with that too, what you were saying as far as in year 4 or year 5, I was able to experience success pretty early in my career, get kids to grow, do all that good stuff. But I truly probably didn't know what I was doing 100% probably until that year, the year 5, which was the year I didn't teach most of the year. And then now I'm planning going back into the classroom. I literally know everything I'm going into planning. I know the research behind it. I was like, okay, this don't work. This isn't a high enough effect size. I'm really putting a lot of attention toward that. I'm like, is this really what I'm supposed to be doing? So I put my mind on that. So I know what I'm doing going into the classroom. So it took me that time as well to really know what I'm doing. I was doing the right stuff initially, but at the same time, I really didn't 100% know why I was right.
And I think that why that you just mentioned is a really key component of the art of teaching, of the pedagogy of teaching, because there are certain things that you may do it and you're like, oh, you feel like it works, but knowing the why to be able to replicate it, or to like share with someone else, be like, hey, try this and here's the reason why. This is how you do it. This is how you do it. Implement it, and for them to have success too is one of the things that over the years that I've been teaching them. Like, oh, okay, that's the real secret sauce,
Mm-hmm.
if you will. Is
Yeah, and
that
it
the thing
is.
that's? Oh, sorry, my bad. Go
Go
ahead.
ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was gonna ask, is that the thing that's kept you in this field? Because, like you mentioned, and like I've said too, like we've seen folks who come in, do their 5 years or however many years, and I don't think they come in planning to exit, but they do. But what's kept you in?
Really just being able, it sounds corny, but just being able to help kids and really
Mm,
having a purpose. Because I'm
yeah.
somebody that lived a good majority of my adulthood living without purpose. Like, not, I'm only 38 now, but when I entered teaching, I was 31, education at 29. And my
Mm-hmm.
early 20s, like I was a smart kid. I was all those things. I was in GT, all those good things. But until I really discovered a purpose of why, I know Eric Thomas, ET the hip hop preacher, they call him, he talks about having a
Mm-hmm.
why. And then once I was able to realize helping kids and then just seeing kids grow, whether it's behaviorally kids that were getting put out of schools and now they're excelling, or kids that were struggling academically and now they're writing books, or a kid
Yeah.
that was dyslexic and now that kid is mastering assessments. Those are the things that keep you going. It's not about the money. Now, obviously, I've been able to come up with a lot of routines and do a lot of things and so many ideas in some ways. I'm always trying to come up with something. But at the same time, it's always about helping students. Because if I wanted to just make it about myself, I could have just become a writer and just kept
Right.
it that. And I could have made it about a Mr. Short or J Short, as they called me at that time. But now it's about helping kids and just seeing them grow. Because I just imagine now most of my older kids are, in high school. But once we get to 5, 10 years from now, we're gonna start who's gonna become a teacher, who's gonna become that NFL player, and you get to say, "Oh, I'm one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the reasons that kid may have gotten there."
That's what's up. Similarly, yeah. So first off, I want to make sure that I give you your props, give you your flowers, and salute you, sir, because there that is something that I'm not sure a lot of people are hearing or they're not feeling. And I hope that whoever listens to this podcast, that you know that there are others who are out there who are rooting for you, who want you to be successful, and that what that success looks like and feels like is going to be different for each of us. But in
Mm-hmm.
knowing that you're going to have kiddos who are in front of you for just one academic year, but the impact that you're going to have on them is going to be felt years down the line is amazing. So props to you, sir, for all the things that you're doing.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, yeah, because you're absolutely right. Like, what grade do you teach predominantly?
Well, next year I'm actually going to be going to teach fifth grade.
Fifth grade.
Previously I taught second, third, fourth, so I've taught all the most of the upper grade levels, and then actually taught second one year. So that was actually probably one of the years where I figured out a lot of things. So fifth grade, I'm looking forward to teaching that next year. I'll be self-contained. So the good thing about that is that they're going to be yours the whole day. You get to set the tone. There's
Mm-hmm.
nothing wrong with having a partner teacher, but sometimes they have different philosophies and things like that, behavior management, all those different things. So being able to have them the whole day, you get to kind of set the tone.
Got it. Got it. So I predominantly teach middle school kiddos.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, I'm gonna shower you with your props, sir. The kid folks who teach our kiddos, the littles in elementary school, so K through 5, man, listen, the things that you have to deal with. Because for me, I know, hey, kiddos come see me. We're gonna learn math. I'm gonna teach math as well as other things, and then you go. When it's all you all the time, look, I can give kiddos those littles 30 minutes, and then I'm like, I'm tapped. The energy, I gotta go sit down somewhere. So, what's that like for you? Is that really your lane? Is that what you find the most enjoyment with, or do you want to go to middle school, possibly high school?
No, I see the lane. I
Mm,
see lane. I see elementary is the route for me because you get to
yeah.
catch them before they kind of start developing those habits. Middle school, I want to deal with all that teenage angst and all the stuff that my sister taught middle school for years. She just moved to high school and say they can't control themselves. I don't deal with none of that. But at the same
Oh,
time, at the elementary level, you can catch them at that age. I'm high energy, like
mm-hmm.
as in real life. I'm actually a very laid back person, and even with
Yep.
adults, they think I'm too serious, and even think I'm probably low key, hey ho sometimes. But at the same time, um, with the kids, I'm very energetic. I'm very relationship driven. So I mean, that's how I am most time in my interpersonal life. Most
Mm-hmm.
people that know me, but with the kids, I'm very high energy. I get on tables. I'm a big follower of Ron Clark. I love a lot of what he brings to the table. So I do a lot of those things. I jump on tables. I'm very high energy. In some ways, I've probably toned it down a little bit
Mm-hmm.
just because a lot of the schools that I've been at since my first school have been open concept. So a lot of it you kind of I tone down some things just because you got people around you. It's kind of a little distracting at times, like if you're doing too much. So I've
Yeah.
toned it down somewhat. But even I know next year I'm thinking about cranking the heat back up and kind of getting back to my roots a little bit and getting back to that super high energy style that I've always had, which I still do. I mean, even in intervention, I have 2 kids and I'm still standing on the table, which is
God.
somewhat ridiculous, but I still do it.
Look, us as educators, we recognize, look, the goal is for kids to learn, and whatever we got to do in order to ensure that,
Mm.
that's what we're doing. So I feel you. I don't get up on the tables anymore, but I do understand the high energy. I do understand the high energy.
I don't know,
So,
man. Like I'm starting to have knee issues and stuff. I'm like, man, I used to do stuff like run out the
mm-hmm.
recess and things like that. I'm like, man. And it was once I was running out the recess with my kids some years ago, and like I pulled a muscle or something like that. And I'm just like, oh man. My
Yeah,
partner teacher was like, yeah, I knew that was gonna happen eventually. I was only
same.
33 then, and I was still relatively young. 33 is
Look,
still on the better side, but
all you need is just one or two kiddos to really humble you in a way of like, okay, I'm not a teenager anymore. I
oh
really got
yeah,
to recognize. Yeah. Same,
yeah.
similarly to what you were saying, like I'd be playing the kiddos on the basketball court every day, sweating it up. And then at one point it was just like, similarly too, I was just walking and I think I coughed the wrong way and I pulled something. I was just like, oh, okay, I am now of that generation. I cannot be doing this every day. Mm-mm. So I'll tell the kiddos like, look, you'll get one game out of me per quarter. That's it. I can't give you more than that because Mr. Pierre's got to be able to walk home. So thinking about um, where you are right now, like you said, you're going into year 10 or 10 years underneath your belt, knowing that everything can't be a priority because if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. What would be one
Mm.
thing that you would say to your younger self of like, look, if this is a hill to die on, this is the one that you should really go hard for?
um, that's tough. Like, and I said, that younger self coming into teaching, I would say understand who you are to
Hmm.
yourself and to everybody else. Because one of the things I had to, as you know, as a black male, you have to protect yourself, and they be all
Mm-hmm.
super serious. But early in my career, I was performing. Like I said, I didn't know what I was doing, but other people knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
So not in a bad way,
Yeah.
but they
Yeah.
knew what I was doing. So I was getting high performance. I didn't think 91% as a second year teacher in reading, black males passing mastering assessments, and kids being proficient in reading. That's a big thing.
Yeah, it
To me,
is.
it's just like, okay, let's see what we can do next year. Can we duplicate this? But
Yeah.
you don't see other people are looking at it that as, one, that green eyed monster. And also they are cognizant of that. They're not gonna give you credit for it. They know
Mm-mm.
what you're doing.
Yep.
Because my second classroom, it wasn't open concept, but I had windows. So I go back, I have video from my second year. It's not me actually teaching per se, but I actually have videos of some of the activities some of my kids were doing. Some of them were leading class. They were doing a lot of cool things. Kids got student-led core response. I didn't even think anything of the video until I reposted it on social media. And I'm like, I'm like, man, I was doing some pretty big stuff. And some of these are high impact strategies, and then you don't
Yeah.
even realize you're doing. You're just in there teaching.
Yep.
And I'm organically doing stuff that was the correct stuff, and I didn't realize that. So you don't realize you got to protect yourself because some people are going to feel a certain type of way about that. You're a second, third year teacher coming in, and you're rocking it out. So it's not to boost yourself up and say, "Oh, I'm awesome," but understand who you are and how other people are going to view that. Like I understand that completely. Now I'm someone at a regular school campus, and my school's not a high performing school. And I've been able a chance to consult. I'm doing podcasts, somebody like yourself interviewing me.
Yep.
I've done a couple, so we both know what comes with that as teachers.
And
Some people don't like if you're the kind of decent teacher at your school, and nevertheless be the one who's doing all this stuff outside in the world. So, if anything, I would tell that younger self just be aware of what's coming with it. Like, just know to protect yourself. Know that other people are going to feel that way, and just learn to accept it. Don't come in with some idea that thinking like everybody's going to love you or it's going to be some euphoric thing. It's not going to happen. So that would probably be what I tell that younger self. And I wrote letters to my younger self before all enough when I was in college. And one of my biggest fears at that time, because people thought I had a lot of potential even at that age, even though I wasn't living up to it, was that I was afraid of, I guess, the hateration or the envy that came along with it. Because I always was very aware of that. And so that kind of held one of the things that held me back for years. But now I'm like, man, I can't even worry about that. You just you gotta go. That's pretty much what it is.
that's what's up. That's what's up. So to anyone who's listening, and I think there are probably a couple of individuals who are listening who are like, okay, I know what he's saying. I know what he's saying. He doesn't have to go into details or be mad explicit about it, but I understand what he's saying. Yeah. And it's true. And it's unfortunate because when you are at a place where you get the support you need, you get the support that you deserve, really, to just flourish. Because ultimately, it's not about me, the adult. I'm now at a point, if I'm in front of kids, like, I've lived enough life to be able to tell kiddos, like, look, I've probably lived 2 or 3 of your lifetimes. This isn't about me. This is about you.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're doing all of that for the kiddos and it's working, yeah, there are going to be others who are like, nah, we got to take them down a peg.
Especially if
When
you're
it's
the most
like,
popular teacher. They don't like
yeah.
that. Yeah,
And,
people don't realize. Like, I work elementary, so
mm-hmm.
and I mean, you work middle school, but they say teachers tend to act like their age level. So, they want to be like, they want to be those things. And I was an interventionist the last 2 years, so I had not only a chance to reach the kids that I was working with, as far as like, say, if I'm in the classroom as an
Right.
interventionist,
Yep.
it's kids on kindergarten. Like, I was walking with one of the assistant principal one day, and one of the kids was like, "Mr. Short, this," and she's like she didn't even realize this kids on multiple grade levels that knew who I was. I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't have to introduce myself. That was the thing. If I wanted to pick up a kid, they already, oh, that's Mr. Short. Like they would address me. It wouldn't even be like I had to introduce myself when I
Mm-hmm.
never even thought to do it. To be honest with you.
And the reality is, when you are a teacher who's safe, when the kiddos feel safe
Mm-hmm.
with you or in your presence, you're not going to need to do that. Like, my first couple of years, I didn't understand why kiddos were coming to my classroom who I didn't teach. I didn't understand why they were coming before class. I didn't understand why they were like, when they would have recess or time to chill, they would want to come and spend time in the classroom. And it wasn't necessarily like they're chopping it up with me. It's just like they understood, or they felt, or they had conversations with other kiddos who were like, no, Mr. Pierce's place, his room is a safe space. We can just be.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that I am more cognizant of. And I think more than even like the content that I teach, that's the thing that I'm happy for, because I recognize that the kiddos feel seen and they feel safe in that space, my space, whether it be my classroom or whatever, that when you are safe, you are going to be able to learn. So even though I'm not in your classroom, I've never seen your classroom, a full, a full day of it. I've just seen snippets of what you posted online. I know, like, oh yeah, it makes sense. I can see why the kiddos are performing at the levels that they're performing. That, look, if I don't feel safe, I'm not really listening and absorbing the thing that the teacher's saying. If I'm always like, look, is someone going to make fun of me if I get the wrong answer? Is the teacher going to somehow shame me? So all of that makes sense.
Yeah, one of the best things I ever heard from a student in my second year. I know it. Well, no, his mom told me, or his adopted mother told me. She said, "Oh man, Miss Short don't really be tripping off of nothing." You know what I'm saying? Like, come from a certain background, when kids say stuff like that, like, "Oh, he really," not in the sense of like I'm letting everything go. He's
Right.
like, "I don't really be tripping like that." You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Because the kids
Right.
know that. Like, I'm not gonna be in there. Oh, I'm not gonna get into the male female teacher thing. But
Mm-hmm.
as male teacher, the kids tend, one of the things they tend to like is that we're a bit more like, "Hey, that's cool." You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Not like, you're running in the hallway. We're not going to lose our mind. Like, oh, you need to, all that extra stuff. Like, we're just
Yeah.
like, hey, just go back and walk.
And that's as you're saying that, I'm remembering my years too, and there were a lot of things that I was doing that I wasn't. To me, it just seemed understood. But
Mm-hmm.
then a principal friend of mine said, like, hey, William Superior, you really have to make the implicit explicit. Because, yeah, the reason why I'm not tripping over that is because I'm like, look, I don't have to nag you, quote unquote, or repeat this 17 times at this loud voice to yell at you. I'm like, hey, yo, B, just the reason why I don't want you to do that is because you could hurt somebody, or I don't want you to hurt yourself. Go back and walk and do it right the first time. Bet?
And the
Sweet.
thing,
And then keep it pushing.
yeah, and I tell kids, I don't. I'll tell kids, even the more difficult ones. Like, I don't argue with children. Like, if I tell you something to do something once, that's what it is. It's not like
Yeah.
I'm not arguing with you. You like do it, or you're gonna be out of recess, or that's gonna be what it is. I'm not gonna go back and forth with you. We're not gonna
Right.
get in a power struggle. Like, I'm teacher, so it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like, once I tell you to do it, that's what it is. But that don't mean you walk around tripping about every little thing. You know what I'm saying? But I will. There was a time I actually kind of lit into this one kid over the small. Like, I'll trip more sometimes off that little small thing you may do. Like, the kid, there was a kid I was in my interventions, and we are preparing for state assessments, and he went to the, I guess, what was it, the trash can, and came back. You know how some kids go to the trash can, they want to hit their little friend or somebody on the way back. And I was like, dude, you can't do stuff like that. I'm like, man, someone has to be able to trust you to walk somewhere for 10 seconds. Like, you can't not act up for 10 seconds. Like, you know what I'm saying? In the real world, when you disrupt the environment, you go somewhere. You can't just do that. Because if you, and it's similar to a statement you made earlier. I heard from LeBron James. I might actually write a reflection about it in the fall. But the way you do anything is the way you do everything. And it's from LeBron. Apparently, Eric Spoelstra said LeBron said that. But I was like, it's been making me think. I was like, man, do I clean my apartment well enough? Do I do this? Yeah, but like you said, the way you do anything is the way you do everything. Like, that little small stuff adds up.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like we know as teachers, it's teachers that can put on a good show when
Oh
they're
yeah.
in front of the crowd and look like
Oh
they're
yeah.
that type of person. But we
Yep.
know behind the scenes they ain't doing all
Hmm.
that. They don't work hard, or they keeping up mess, or they're doing this. The way you do anything is the way you do everything. And because that's the thing that's always sustained me. Because I've been a person like I don't put on the show as a teacher or whatever. Like I'm a male, so I can't have the same relationship with the female teachers as everybody else anyway. And I don't even want to talk about some of the stuff they want to talk about. I'm about to work too. So it's like I'm just coming, I ain't talking about no kids in the sense of behavior. I'm like, yo, how can we get them to 100%? How can we do this? And then I'm going with that, what I'm saying? Like I said, can't have the same relationship, but at the same time, I've always had those same relationships. I'm still friends with my high school friends. So the stuff I do behind the scenes is pretty consistent. But that's not to point myself up, but a lot of people don't do that. They don't put the work in, they complain, they do this. I'm like, but you're not putting the work in. Like you
But
got a whole 2-3 months in the summer and you ain't doing anything.
and I also think
You
to
know,
that, I would reply to that. If you and I were on the same campus, I would also be thinking, look, Mr. Short's Mr. Short, Mr. Pierre's Mr. Pierre. I can't and I won't ever do it the way that Mr. Short does it. So why am I going to attempt to? Therefore, any of my other colleagues who are doing certain things and they may get success from it, I'm not tripping over the relationship that they
mm,
have with the kiddos. I'm thinking, okay, how can I be better? So I
yeah,
think for if you're a teacher and you're not comparing yourself, don't look to compete with your other teachers. It's not
mm-hmm,
that. Look to work in concert with them. So if like, look, Mr. Pierre's the drums, Mr. Short's the guitar. We got others who are trumpets. We got others who are the singers. Maybe you're a backup singer. Maybe you're the lead singer. But whatever your part is, recognize the whole thing is we want to be in concert for the betterment of the kiddos that we're serving. That's it. So
you
if
said a mouthful.
and
You said a
and
mouthful.
it's only a mouthful because I'm at a place now where I recognize that, and I'm hoping that in saying it, there are others who are going to hear it and benefit from it. Because you like, look, if you do faithful in small, faithful in much. If you
Yeah,
do it all the time, if I'm always ready, I don't need to get ready. I stay ready.
yeah.
So similarly
It's
to
kind
like you're saying here, like yeah, it's our vacation, we have our time off, but even during I go to the grocery store, I'm like, oh snap, this could be used for dot
Oh
dot
my
dot.
goodness, yeah,
I'm
man.
talking to Mr. Short about
I
such and
found some
such.
brochures, right
Yeah,
back to Texas, man. Like it's your mind is always working for ideas and things where you can
yeah,
reach these kids. And my thing is like I know one of the questions you sent in the pre-outline
yeah,
about questions to ask was about like that teacher. Like I know when I had a chance to see my first literature coach, Miss Dixon, she modeled a lesson for me. I was like, yo, that's kind of how I want to be. Now, obviously, I want to be my own person, and I'm
mm-hmm.
actually more structured than she is. But I was like, that's like the kind of model for how I want my teaching to look, higher energy. Just go in there and teach. Don't worry
Yeah,
about what PowerPoint you got, all that good stuff. If I'm just delivering the content, you want to make it come alive for the students. So I was like, I just love her approach to it. Like I like trying to learn everything I could from her. My sister's a good teacher. Never had a chance to really watch her teach, but at the same time, I know, and we don't even agree philosophically, but at the same time, I want to take those traits from those people and help that. I tell people, I don't know how much you watch Dragon Ball Z growing up, but I would say I
hey,
became Super Saiyan
yes, you are
because
Goku.
because of the people that I was around,
Yep.
and whether the math coach was great with structure, I still use that structure to this day, even in ELA, and I'm actually going to be teaching math again next year. Or our ESL coordinator, she's the one starts telling me to watch videos, just about teaching and stuff like that. And then the math coach, no, not the math coach, the student support specialist at my first school, Miss Scott, she's probably the best administrator I ever worked for, to be honest with you. And she was just very balanced in her approach to everything. And she actually was a pretty good math teacher. Actually, honestly, me and the math coach didn't really click. So I would actually go to her for a lot of math stuff my second year of teaching. So she would just kind of give me strategies and things to do because she was pretty high performing in the classroom. The literacy coach was the high performing teacher in the history of that district. And my principal was a high performer and the assistant principal was good with behavior. I was surrounded by so much talent at the school. I feel like I was so blessed to be at a school. I mean, honestly, I probably should have stayed together a little longer. But and that's not the only. One of my friends was the fourth grade teacher, really good math teacher. My mentor teacher was pretty good ELA teacher. He's actually like higher up in the district now, and this is only like 5 or 6 years ago. And then his partner, not his partner, one of his teammates is like an instructional coach now. Another girl on the fourth grade team, she's an instructional coach. Everybody from my second team is either a instructional coach, multi-classroom leader, which is a coach slash teacher, and
Yeah,
then the other one's an AP. So it was like the talent that was in that building was ridiculous. So we turned the school around for a reason. So we had so much talent. So I was able to just absorb all of that. And
yeah.
like I said, I went Super Saiyan.
And that's a great example of you got to recognize where you are and also recognize who you are, because it's like, look, everyone wants to be Goku, or everyone's like, all right, I want to be Vegeta, or maybe some people like I'm Frieza. But it's like, as long as you recognize your lane, who you are, and you're true to that, be that. Also recognizing too, look, I can level up or I can switch it. Maybe I'm going to learn something from Piccolo. Maybe I'm going to learn something from, Gohan. Maybe I'll learn something from Goku Black. Whatever it is, if you're able to glean as much as possible, make it your own. Yeah, you will go, oh my goodness, he's level 9,000. So,
Hey,
um,
Krillin was trash, but at least he sacrificed for people. He got everybody else to want to be great.
there you go. There you go. And so, like, to know, I think also too, is to recognize, what I've recognized now too is like, I'm going to enjoy the time or the academic year that we have together, because as much as I would like to be like, yeah, we're going to run it back, run it back, run it back. It's going to be the 96, 97, and 98 Bulls, and we're just going to do our thing. You really just have the moments that you have because you don't know what's going to happen, whether it's going to be you who goes somewhere else, whether it's going to be someone else who goes somewhere else. Maybe it's going to be a principal who leaves and then a new principal comes in and shakes things up, even if you've had success, or a superintendent or a board. So it's really like, look, get as much into your bag, get as much that you can learn, and by your bag is you grabbing as many Dragon Ball Z balls so that you can level up and do what you got to do, so that wherever you go to next, you're going to be able to level
Yeah,
up
and
yourself
I
for your
think
kids.
I think enough teachers don't look at it as a career, and you're thinking 10,
Mm-hmm.
15 years down the line, like, okay, I'm teaching third grade. I'm only looking at third grade stuff. I'm
Yeah.
like, no, you might want to, because even I thought about there was a math training last year. I was very piqued in interest. It piqued my interest because it was just, they was pushing rigor and some of the things they were talking about. So I peeked in for 20 minutes and
Yeah.
I'm teaching math next year too. So it's kind of like, it's like that type of thing. There are trainings I went to 3-4 years ago that I won't be able to use into this year. But
Mm.
it's like those, that don't mean you just be all over the place. But if something is interesting and maybe something that can help you grow, why not do it?
Pick it up.
Don't look at
Yeah.
it, I'm just this type of teacher, because you never know what's going to change. And my current school, when I came into the school, there were two different APs. Now we've changed APs and it's two different ones now. You never know what's going to happen. So that's a whole different dynamic, personalities. I even came to the school because of just the demographics of the school and things like that. But now it's shifted a little bit just because of those type of things. I mean, we lost pretty much our whole ELA team after my first year. So you can't even get caught up on that stuff. Like a friend of mine, similar to what you're saying, told me the same thing a couple of years ago. Don't get caught up on that, because you're like, oh, I came to the school because of this. So you'll start changing schools every other year if you want to go off of that. It's because a lot of schools aren't that stable. You got a few that are, and the schools that are stable, it's hard to get a spot there. Sometimes you luck up and you catch a break just because the school is unstable sometimes. So as you say, focus on yourself, not be selfish, but realize it's a career and don't get caught up on, and I hate to say even be selfish in the sense of what this principal needs you to do or something like that. Sometimes it's not best for your career, because you need to be looking all the way down the line, because you end up doing some foolishness just because this principal looking out for themselves. Because even my third year, I was switched
Yeah.
talking about what you're talking about. Before the fourth 9 weeks, I was switched before the fourth 9 weeks to a different homeroom
Hmm.
in the same on the same grade level. So I
Wowzers.
went from projected to get 90% pass rate to they gave me the lowest kids on the grade level, or I don't like using those words, the kids that weren't on level.
Yeah.
So I can pull them up because I can grow kids fast. So that stuff happens all the time. And then you had a global pandemic, and that
Yep.
messed up my fourth year. So I haven't had a full year in the classroom since my second year of teaching, and I'm going into my eighth year just because of the flow of things. So I mean, people, you can't get caught up on that stuff. So that's one of the
No.
reasons I wanted to go back to the classroom. I'm like, man, I want some full years.
Yeah.
And crazily, that ain't even the word, but my second year, we had Hurricane Harvey and
Hmm.
an ice storm. So it's like, I mean, that was a full year, but it's like, come on, man. So
Yeah.
I just want a clean full year. Hopefully, nothing happens this year, but
But and what's wild is, as you're saying all that, I know for certain there are folks who are listening who are like, oh, okay, it's not just me. Every year as well, since I've gotten into the profession, into this work, there's been something. Because I mean, that's life. We'd love to think that, oh, everything is according to the books over the summer. You get your room ready, however you set up your seats, your seating chart. Yeah, that's going to be the whole seating chart for the entire year. It's never going to change how you set up the
mm-hmm.
room, whatever, all these ideas that you got, and you implement them, and then you're like, oh snap, yeah, that just worked exactly the way I thought. And it's like, nah, son. Theory and practice are two different things. And hearing you or seeing some of the things that you have been posting online, like there was one that particularly caught my eye where you had the I believe it was the unit where you had the standards, you had the opening, you had your body, you had this exit ticket, you had all these things planned out. And I was just like, that looks fantastic. But that's a person who understands that I need this level of preparation so that when things don't work, I've got something to fall back on rather than,
Yeah.
hey, let me just wing it, or I have a general idea of how to do things and then we'll see what happens. This is, to me, is like, all right, this dude understands that I have this plan, because I know that if I have no plan, then I'm planning to fail. But with this plan, even if something happens, or rather when something happens, I can be flexible enough to
Well, yeah.
adjust.
All enough, a lot of teachers, honestly, they look at, oh, this is what, depending on what district you're in, they're like, oh, this is what the district gives us. This is the scope or whatever. I'm like, man, that stuff is gonna get you in trouble because sometimes them folks don't post that stuff until right before the
Right,
unit comes out. Like, man,
right.
you need to map this stuff out and know what you're doing. You didn't know because I'm big on. I hate short weeks. That's like my thing. So I'm like, you playing around that type of stuff. You already had that stuff mapped out because I like full because the way my progression is set up, I like 5-day weeks, so it kind of makes it a little easier to Friday close out the week, then you can assess on Saturday. So I
Mm,
structure things that way. So if I know it's gonna be a 3-day week, I'm not really gonna probably get into much unless it's the beginning of a unit. So say like if I have a unit that's 7 or 8 days, that might be where I start the unit on that short week and just end it the next week or have like a reteach day or something like that. So you want to maximize your time. I'm real big on efficiency with time. So you might see me because the next article I'm gonna post is about after planning, and I posted something the other day talking about some of my ad is about the effect size of an actual lesson. Because you might realize the lesson probably won't hit on much because you didn't really think about the activities that you actually had planned and the stuff that you're
mm-hmm,
doing. The lesson
mm-hmm.
might not have the effect size that it should. And then I actually time out the lessons. I might cut some out because I'll be like, this is not gonna work. Because I mean, not because of kid behavior, just like you might take too much time to do this part, or you might think about how you're gonna transition. There's a lot of things that go into it. So I try to do that as well. And I started doing that a couple of years ago, just timing everything out. Because one trait I didn't realize I had that I'm gonna say other teachers don't have. I'm very time efficient, but I move at a much faster rate. As you can
Mm,
see, I do talk fast, but I
yeah,
move at a very fast rate. I hear teachers say I don't have enough time. I'm like, yeah, you do. You just don't plan it out the way. And then some of them like to do this a little. They like to do this a little too much. So it's like, I'm not saying there is anything wrong with talking, but sometimes it's too much, and you're just talking for 10 minutes, and
yeah.
really you can just get to it, and then you cutting out 10-20 minutes just off of that. So it's a lot of lessons that I get through. What some people take a day and a half, 2 days to do, I do it in one day because I just move
Mm-hmm.
that fast. And I know it was once when I was doing intervention, I told a kid that we were going to do something around 10:35, a particular part of the activity. He's like, you said we were going to do this at 10:35 and then it's 10:35. I'm like, well, yeah, what are you talking about? I know. I timed it that way. I do it that
Yeah.
way on purpose. I know how long stuff takes. So,
Was that something? When did that click for you? Because I know for certain, or let me ask, that wasn't what it was like since from the jump, from the beginning, was it?
oh no, I think the thing I'm very ADHD, so I've always had to do schedules anyway. So
Okay.
once I started learning to be more successful, I started planning out days and things like that. So I think that was part of it,
Mm-hmm.
having agendas. And like I said, I didn't start after planning until about 3 or 4 years ago, and then I
Ah,
started realizing, oh man, you're really time efficient. Like and my principal actually said that this year. He said I didn't waste a minute. I'm like, to me, I'm like, of course I don't. Like, what are you talking about? That's like I don't waste time. They come in and get right to it. It's not like a. And then it's something my first principal told me, or not me directly. He was talking to the whole staff. He said either you fill in the blanks or they will.
mm-hmm.
So all that idle time, because I've seen that in a lot of classrooms, sometimes the activities and things that you have planned, it gives the kids too much dead space.
There
So
you go.
what do most adults do when they got too much time? I'm from a small town. You ain't got nothing to do. You
Yeah.
get it like I was at home with my buddies and we was talking and stuff about high
Mm-hmm.
school. A lot of the stuff you get into in small towns just because you ain't got nothing else to
Nothing
do.
else to do. Yep. Yep.
It's so idle minds devil workshop. So at the same time, like with kids, like if you don't give them nothing to do, what you think?
They gonna
What you
find
think they're
something.
gonna do?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That after planning, when did that sort of click for you? And if you could elaborate a little bit on what you mean by after planning.
So after planning, like I said, I'm gonna write an article on it, but it's around 2019 when I taught second grade because I taught everything. So after planning is where I'm already planning the lesson. I actually, for the most part, honestly, like right now, I have all my reading instruction planned for the whole first semester of the school year. I've already had that plan just now. I mean, I wouldn't have done that probably a couple of years ago. I wouldn't have been that advanced where I could do that. But I normally plan up the whole 9 weeks. I started doing that my second year. But now what I do, I take those lessons because most of the time I don't even have to look at it after the fact. I take what I'm gonna do that week. I'll take like whether it's a passage and certain activities, and I will time it out. So I'll go read and okay, I'm gonna do this passage or do this and time out every little piece of what I'm doing and see what maybe I can adjust or not. And really sometimes just by seeing how much time it's going to take, additional questions to ask, what misconceptions, those type of things, writing, math, all that stuff. So thinking about how much, mainly it's about time. And then sometimes I'll throw in the misconceptions, maybe additional questions I can ask. So I add in different little components to enhance the lesson. Those are already kind of set because I focus more on structure. And because the flow of it, because I think sometimes we get caught up on the talking part and what we're delivering to the kids, coming out of our mouth. But really, if the structure's set up right and you have the content set up right with the right think alouds and all that good stuff, I think kids are going to perform. You need to lead them to learn instead of you teach. I think focus more on the learning instead of the teaching, but that's additional to what you're asking. But most time I focus on the timing and then all the other stuff, maybe something I can add and what I can take away. So with that after planning, that's what a lot of times what I focus on. So instead of a Sunday evening, doing the lesson plan as a lot of people do, I'm looking over mine and seeing how I can make it better and how I can enhance it for that week. And sometimes it's good just to visualize what you're doing that particular week. You almost can have the week in your head because I'm someone that can talk a lot. And I think a lot of teachers, because for one, I'm got a very deep voice, so it carries in a building. They think when they get beside me as a teacher that I'm going to be very loud. But actually, by the third day, I normally don't talk that much because the first 2 days, because I go according to Bloom's. So the first day is, knowledge, and you just teach them whatever it's like basic recall, learn what the concept is, no matter the subject. The second day, you see if they understand it, and then they're applying what you're doing more facilitation. And then the next day, they're analyzing what you're doing, some of it, but you're really forcing them to think for themselves. And then on the Friday or the 5th day, I would have them assess. I would assist them. So most time I don't even do anything on Friday. Most times I'm just sitting there, then we go over the assessment or something like that. So it's according to a progression. So I kind of just plan it out that way.
Awesome. I'm hoping that the folks who are hearing this episode are picking up some of the gems that you're dropping because I think there are a lot of us when we start, we think like what you were just saying that, hey, if I just talk, and then talk, and then talk, yeah, the kids are going to pick up the stuff that I'm talking about. When in fact, it's like, nah, the more you talk, the less they are engaged because they don't have to do anything. They're like, oh, Mr. Pierre, Mr. Short's the one doing all the work. They get to sort of chill and zone out. Whereas, like you said, say a few words, allow them to talk to each other, allow them to work things out, allow them to fail, make some mistakes, learn from those mistakes. And then, as you said, then assess in such a way that shows them or helps them to see like, oh, no, you actually now know because you know what doesn't work because you've tried this. Now let's see where you can pick up the things where you are doing things particularly well and whatever the standard is, if you've mastered it, if you're proficient, or if it needs some improvement. So yeah, there's a lot that you just said that's really dope.
And all I know, that was one of the comments I got my first year from that same principal about, Auto Minds, the Devil Workshop. He came in and watched me teach a math lesson, and I was doing all that direct instruction and showing them examples. He was like, hey, let them work a little bit. It was like one of the best comments I ever, it was simple.
Yep.
On the spot coaching. It wasn't then like, oh, you terrible and you doing too much teacher talk and all that stuff. It was like, no, like let them work a little bit.
Yep.
And so after that, I incorporate a lot more, I call it student dues, and I let them, come up, show example. I normally do 1 or 2, even with writing and different subjects. And then I let them do something. And then, because they learn a lot better from themselves. And I don't know if you played sports growing up, but your connection is most times going to be to your teammates. If you got teammates that are leaders, that's why you having the Tom Brady's, you having them guys that are great leaders. Like when you hear, like I'm hearing these stories now about LeBron. I heard for years that he had a high basketball IQ, but I don't know if you've ever watched Amon Shumpert tell a story.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, that man can tell a story. I'm like, man, dude, somebody said LeBron has a documentary. He needs to do it.
Dude, yeah, he needs to be the voice of the narrator. Yep, for sure.
But he tells the stories about LeBron and how and he even said the things about a lot of great players. They don't want to dispense the knowledge.
Yeah.
But LeBron, he said, man, he just wants to dispense knowledge. He wants you to know this stuff. He said a lot of guys kind of want to keep it for themselves. They don't want to stay outside. But I kind of get the LeBron thing. I'm like people tell me, oh, don't share as many ideas. I'm like, look, dude, they're not gonna be able to move like me anyways. I don't really care. So it's like the same time because I move at a speed they can't move it. So it's like it's not being arrogant. I just know they can't. So I know I just do it a different way. So they're not gonna be able to have that same relationship with kids. So I see why LeBron does it, but he's like, they're not gonna be able to beat me anyway. But what Amon Shumpert was talking about is just that ability to learn from LeBron. You never hear anybody talk about LeBron. LeBron has never played for a great coach. He's never played for a Phil Jackson or a Greg Popovich. But so I say that to say it's tied into teaching. Kids learn a lot better from their classmates than from you.
Yeah.
And there was like people might come to my class, like kids always think I'm pretty dope. I'm always number one teacher, best teacher ever, all that good stuff. But I know how to facilitate. And I always tell people I let them think they're in control, but I really am. And I let them be a part of the process. They review lessons, they do things. But somebody might walk in and it's like, oh, the kid's reviewing the lesson, but I'm sitting right there. Like, so if something go wrong, I'm gonna be able to correct it. But you make them feel a part of the process. And I had second graders that could manage materials, they were doing the stuff with the computer, all the stuff, but you get them more engaged because it's like, and for one, you make it, they don't know what's gonna happen every day. Like that's the fun part. Instead of just doing some boring activity, my teacher go up there and put something on the board. Like when we were kids, I ain't gonna lie, I don't remember having no teacher that did fun stuff.
No.
You just set up, you shut up, and like the teacher wrote something on the board, you copied it down, and you went home.
Yeah.
Like, I don't remember anything from school in the early ages. So
all of what you were saying, for again, part of the reason for this podcast is like what you just mentioned, is that I don't see that it's a competition between me and the other teachers. I see it again as we are working in concert, or we ought to be working in concert. Now, you may be like, look, I'm trying to get as much as possible from Wooly, from Mr. Pierre, and I'm going to take that, I'm going to run with it, I'm going to do dot, 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 dot. And my thinking is like, as long as our kids are being taught, I'm good. Steal from me, quote unquote, as much or everything as you can. Similar to LeBron, I'm like, look, I know who I am. I know the things that I can do. I know the things that I do really well. And anything that I don't do really well, I too am like, all right, I'm going to be in the gym shooting those shots to make sure that when it comes time to shoot the shot, I'm going to make the shot. If you think that you can just watch me for 2 minutes, take what I do, and then go replicate it yourself, and if you can, all the praise goes to you. But I recognize who I am, and I'm comfortable enough in what I do. Yeah.
That's another Eric Thomas ism, but he talks about, they talk about Optimus Prime is great, but he ain't never without the Autobots. And then you look at all these great players. How many guys won some? Even though Kobe or Shaq, they profess they're great players, they ain't win them without the other. Well, Shaq had D Wade.
Yep.
Nobody won anything without another player.
No.
Jordan had Pippen. The Celtics had all, like KG was by himself losing, trash, can't win anything. That one year they did okay with Minnesota when we had Latrell Sprewell and who was the other guy, Sam Cassell. When he had them, he won. But when they got with Boston, he won, and he was in a winning organization. And like you said, how many people is it? It isn't about that one player. How many teams is it about? Like organizations just never win. The Lions ain't never won nothing. The Clippers have never won anywhere, even though they got all these great players.
All these great players,
they always come up short. They always come up short. You look at, they done got Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, and they won. Then LeBron done won a championship the first year with AD.
Clippers had Lob City. They had DeAndre. They had Blake Griffin. They had CP3 when he was a younger They had a whole bunch of players, but they didn't bring it to fruition. So you're absolutely right. Of like, it's not solely just like me by myself, and it's not even solely. Sometimes you can have the right team, like you mentioned, but if there's something that's off, if there's an AP or a principal, or just something funky from that particular year, COVID, that just throws everything out of whack, it's like, all right, it's not going to happen that year. My thing too, again, comes back to give everyone the best tools, give everyone the knowledge to be able to do what they ought to do. And if they choose to do it and our kids win, then you got success. And that success could look differently, because you said it a couple times, and I'm a firm believer of it as well, is that my kiddos are not going to remember every single lesson that I teach. However, my kiddos are going to remember, like, yo, did I feel safe? Did I feel seen in Mr. Pierce's class? And if that's what they remember and feel, then I'm like, I did my job. Because if you felt safe and seen, then I know you were going to be able to learn something.
I'm very much getting into, I always been into the Hattie effect sizes, but a lot of stuff they talk about is teacher stuff. Really, teacher content knowledge is not even a high effect size. It's pretty low. So like low. And you actually knowing the stuff don't mean anything. But as you said, teacher-student relationship. I even saw one communication outside of the classroom is like a pretty high effect size. I'm like,
it is.
You think the smallest things, these little things that we do, it's very easy to do. And some people, it's just not them though. Like they don't even like kids. So they don't want to talk to them outside of like, that's my lunchtime. I'm like, okay, okay, cool. But you can't spend one day a week just talking to your kids. They'll want to ride more for you. And then the thing is, it's like these little small things, because that was one of the things I did very well early in my career. I motivated them. I engaged them. I didn't even know how to teach it. But, I was able to do those things. So kids will ride for you just off of that. They will perform for you just off of that. Or they cannot perform for you, because actually some of the lower effect sizes, if you label kids, if you do these things, like some of this stuff is scientific. It's not just, people tell you this stuff.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff is like actual data to back up. If you do use
Hmm.
this approach, it works. And I don't know if that's communicated enough to teachers, but some people, it's just not them. Now, obviously, you want to try to recruit teachers who are that way, but a lot of teachers aren't that way. So
Yeah.
that's the hard part. But how can you kind of structure your school where it's like that? Because even if you do all this stuff, kids can tell if it's not real. That was somebody told me
Hmm.
my first year. Kids know who real. So it's like
Yeah.
just keeping. I mean, some of the teachers that may listen, it may not come out until October. But like, how you gonna tell your kids not to bully when you bully? How you gonna tell your kids not to gossip when you gossip? How you gonna tell
Yep.
your kids not to interact with others when you don't interact well with others? How you gonna tell kids not to be emotional and maintain their composure if you don't maintain your composure?
Right.
Like that's just the truth. They watch you. So if you
Yeah.
don't do it, then they won't do it. So that's the thing. I feel like I've always modeled because even a teacher was like, "You always seem like you're under control," and I guess I am. But if you walk in my classroom, my kids are always under control. So
Yeah.
that's kind of it.
Yep.
So
Folks, there's a lot that Mr. Short was dropping. I know that this is not going to be the only episode that we're able to chop it up for you to be able to really benefit everything that he's saying, because there's so much from recognizing that the quote unquote small things really are not the small things. Those are the big things that are super important. Number two, the relationships that you are creating with your kids. Authenticity. Are you being your true self and allowing your kids to see your true self so that they too can be their authentic selves? There's so much that has been said in this first conversation. And so I say first because I know, Mr. Short, you're going to be back. We're definitely going to have to continue this conversation. But I
oh, for sure.
recognize that us as educators, and for this particular episode, we're not going to have an hour to listen to the whole conversation. So this is going to get chopped up. And then even within that hour, even within how this is going to get chopped up, there's still going to be things that folks are going to be like, oh, snap, give me more, give me more. So I would love to extend another invitation for you to come back
Oh, for
and we
sure,
can
man. I
chop it up
love
some
to.
more. But folks, this, I know, like I said, this is just part one of many of a conversation between Mr. Pierre and Mr. Short. But for this particular episode, I want to say thank you, Mr. Short, for dropping so many gems. I hope whoever's listening to this is able to pick up one or two. I'm Mr. Pierre. He's Mr. Short. And this has been another episode of the Chronicles of Mister. Thank you for listening.
All right. Thank you.